Let's try and understand what exactly happened in Canada. Joining me, a special guest from Toronto in Canada, Terry Milewski. He's a journalist, he's a reputed author, and has also written a lot about, remember, the sensitive affairs, especially with regard to the pro-Khalistan movement happening in Canada. Terry, welcome to the telecast. What is your assessment? It was long in speculation. Finally, it is happening. What led to it?
Well, there's so many factors that led to it, but very briefly, it's a loss of confidence, isn't it? He knows that he could not command the confidence of the majority of his own caucus, that is, his MPs in Parliament. Growing numbers have been calling for him to step down because they fear for their own jobs if they run again under his leadership. And of course, he's also lost the confidence of voters who have been consistently telling pollsters for 2 years now that Trudeau is finished in terms of his public esteem. And most significantly and most recently, he has lost the confidence of his most loyal and most valued cabinet minister, Christine Freeland, who now, of course, will be bidding to replace him. And in fact, in the early polling, she is the leading candidate to replace him, just ahead of Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of Canada and of the Bank of England, who's an economist but has no political experience. So we'll see how the race turns out. But in essence, this has been a long time coming, perhaps too long, in the sense that Trudeau would have done his party one great service if he had quit much sooner, rather than leaving it until the last minute when his successor is going to be facing. He's got to have an election this year before October, and he's also going to be facing, he or she is going to be facing the fact of a tariff from the United States, and how will they deal with Trump? It's a lot on the plate that is being left for Trudeau's successor. It's a pity for the party that he waited so long to pull the plug.
That's a very important point you're making. Stay on with me, Terry, because remember that he's, for now, the Prime Minister still, he's resigned as, or should I say forced to resign, as leader of the Liberal Party. So what does that mean? Who next can take over? When will elections be? But this is as much about internal party fighting. And he called himself a fighter as he was announcing his resignation. And then, remember, the references to reasons here. Popularity dipping, according to surveys that had been coming all these months, economic dissatisfaction, then humiliating exchanges, literally, with US President-elect Donald Trump, to which Trudeau couldn't actually say anything in support of Canada. And then Donald Trump to say, and this is barely hours after the resignation, that people in Canada want the merger to happen, become the 51st state, and the governor of Canada that he's constantly been referring to, Justin Trudeau, has raised a lot of questions on what the Trudeau and Trump-Canada relationship is going to be. Remember, in December, Donald Trump posted an AI image of himself posing with the Canadian flag, in a way igniting the merger controversy with the USA. So I take that question to Terry. Terry, do you think that USA and Canada otherwise have been democratic Western allies, but now with Trump and Trudeau also still at the helm of affairs, and whoever comes in next will be the biggest challenge of a relationship? How do you see that coming? What do you think are the reasons that it needs to stay or should stay intact?
Well, it's a bit like living next door to China in a way. Indians will understand what I mean. Where Canadians often feel the saying is that it's like being a mouse next to an elephant. The elephant sneezes, the mouse catches a cold. Any twitch of the elephant's tail affects Canada bigly, I guess would be the Trumpian word. And what's going to happen now is that the humiliation of Trudeau by Mr. Trump in his silly remarks about Canada being the 51st state and calling Trudeau the governor of the 51st state. All of this is going to have to be in the past, because a new leader cannot afford to just let that kind of thing pass without explaining to the new president that this won't do between allies, and that we expect more respectful behavior. Somebody who can stand up for Canada a little more robustly than Trudeau has done during these last couple of weeks. But more fundamentally, the issue is, what do we do in practice? Never mind the rhetoric and the relationship between the leaders. What are we going to do substantively about the tariff threat 25% tariffs
Correct.
on everything that Canada exports. It's going to be, it's going to kill the Canadian economy. It's going to do enormous damage unless it can be fended off by concerted action by the federal government, the provinces, and business generally to make sure that the tariffs are at least drastically reduced, and that the concerns that Mr. Trump has presented about the border, about drugs crossing the border, about immigrants crossing the border, those concerns can be addressed by making sure the border is locked down. If we can show the Americans that, then we've got a chance. But if we can't, we're in trouble.
You definitely need a mature, politically astute leader next coming in, especially when it comes to the USA. Tell me now about one of the topics you have an expertise in. You've written the book on the 50 years of the Khalistan project. How do you want the relationship here on to become with India, where the whole sensitive exchanges we have seen, troubled ties between India and Canada, or should I say Justin Trudeau and Prime Minister Narendra Modi? So whoever comes in next, how should this relationship go on, especially when it comes to pro-Khalistan issues?
Well, I think that it's going to. There's a good chance that it could get worse rather than better. If Indians imagine,
why do you say that?
Well, some Indians have mentioned to me that it looks like it's going to get better now that we got rid of Trudeau. It's all Trudeau. It isn't. If you want to blame somebody, blame the Canadian police for investigating the murder of Haji Nijjar, coming up with evidence that there was some sort of involvement by Indian intelligence agents and by Indian diplomats, some of whom have been named as a result of the RCMP's investigation. That investigation is going to continue. The trials, if they're going to be trials, will also continue. And that is going to be a problem that is not going to go away because of a change at the top of government. I'm afraid it's not going to get better because
I would say, Terry, that I would absolutely appreciate a, free, proper trial. That's how it should proceed, rather than the jibes that came in from Justin Trudeau on floor of the House as a parliament. Perhaps the next leader could deal with another nation likely in a more mature manner. I think that would keep the relationship intact. And let's hope Canadian soil is kept safe, especially when it comes to these extremist activities. Appreciate you joining us. Terry Milski, thank you very much for your perspective. And let's hope here on who comes in next for Canada may decide in many ways, not just neighbor relations with them, but also with India.